Welcome back to Close Up. The New Hampshire Republican State Committee is in rebuilding mode under new leadership as the party faces the potential of a challenge to President Trump in the first-in-the-nation primary. And the newly elected chairman, Steve Stepanek, is here with us this morning. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam.
So let's talk about this idea of a contested primary in New Hampshire here to start off with. You are one of the longest tenured and most ardent supporters of President Trump, but you promised neutrality when you came into this office as New Hampshire GOP chairman. So can you affirm that neutrality again? Is this something moving forward?
Absolutely. That's what I've said when I was running, and I will reaffirm that I will be neutral. You know, if anyone who's a legitimate Republican candidate wants to come forward and run, they're more than happy to, and they're more than happy to lose.
When you say that, though, do you feel like it's that's neutrality? You know, I mean, obviously, people think President Trump's going to win in the Republican Party, and the numbers bear that out.
It's pretty tough to get excited when the president is looking at the kind of numbers with the Republican base that he is, 93% approval rating. So I feel that he will be the odds-on favorite to win.
Bill Weld has been here for 3 weeks in a row. I think he's coming back again. There's some nuance there. He's a Republican, a longtime Republican, but he ran in the Libertarian ticket for president in 2016. You've been somewhat critical of him. Is it because of that libertarianism, or?
It's because of his back and forth. First, he's a Republican. He disappointed Republicans by then becoming a libertarian and then standing up in 2016 and say, I'm a libertarian for life. Then he turns his back on the libertarians and says, I think I'm going to be a Republican again. He's sort of like that gentleman, Vermin Sherman, who wears Vermin Supreme, who wears the boot in his head and changes parties every time to where he can get the most attention. I sort of think of Bill Weld as somebody who's looking for a lot of attention, and that's about it.
He has explicitly stated when he's been here that potentially that he noted the history that when there is a primary challenge to the president in New Hampshire of his own party, that doesn't always make the president lose in the primary, but that president has tended to lose the general election.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Do you think he's trying to be a spoiler, though?
No, I think he's trying to get attention.
So if a John Kasich or a Larry Hogan, someone like that, jumps into the race, your reaction will be?
You're all welcome in the New Hampshire primary, and work hard and spend lots of money and then lose.
What is your sense of the Democrats who are running for president right now? A lot of them have been coming to this state. I'm sure you've been paying attention to what they've been saying. What do you think they're going with their ideology and with the party?
It's sort of comical to watch it all, and I think that's why somebody like Joe Biden is looking at it, because everybody is running so far to the left that they're gone beyond even the mainstream of the Democratic Party. Forget the country as a whole, and we're looking at really crazy things that they're proposing, and the more crazier it is, the more they go and say, well, that's not crazy enough, I got to come up with something even more crazy. And so it'll be interesting to see who ultimately rises to the top and is the nominee, but based upon some of the comments that they're making and stands that they're taking, I don't see how any of them can realistically win a majority of the independent voters, and that's where the race is always centered.
Specifically on policy, you use the word crazy. What is the craziest in your opinion?
Well, the new Green Deal is just absolutely nuts as far as what they're saying. I mean, I've seen some studies where they said, based upon how much solar power they want, you'd have to have solar panels that cover the whole state of Texas and California to provide the kind of solar dependency that they're looking for. Or looking at the fact that they don't want you to fly planes anymore. It's going to be tough for people going to Europe or over to Hawaii. I think the senator from Hawaii was a little bit concerned about that. But, the whole idea of reparations and how that's going to work, I mean, it's just one thing after another, and they really don't have an answer as to who's going to pay for it. It's just, oh, the rich are going to pay for it. The rich are going to pay for it. With all of the things that they're proposing, they could put 100% tax on all the money that all the rich people pay, and they still wouldn't have enough to even come close to covering the proposals that they're making.
In your new capacity as chairman, you've been trying to take the fight a little bit more to Democrats. Tell us what you're doing on that front in terms of trying to revitalize the party in terms of that ideological battle that you're waging.
Well, basically, as I said when I was running, the Democrats are going to do crazy things. They can't help themselves. And of course, they've proven me right as we go forward here in the legislature in New Hampshire. And so we're just letting everybody know where the Republican Party stands. We send out regular press releases. Doesn't always get printed or covered by the press, but that's okay because we're also sending it out to the state reps, our email list, and letting Republicans know where the party stands on these critical issues. And, you know, we're calling our Democratic constituents to task as well, because they're very, very quick to accuse a Republican or go after a Republican the minute they step over the line. But when Democrats do it, even a lot of the Democrats have criticized, for example, the situation with the lieutenant governor and governor of Virginia, where the governor called for the murdering of born children. And we asked, of course, we did get an answer to that because they actually voted for that, which is really horrible as far as I'm concerned, and most people are. But the other issues, as far as the anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli remarks made by the representative from Michigan, they didn't come out and criticize those at all. And we're trying to call them and say, wait a minute, where do you stand on these critical issues? You're very quick to criticize Republicans, but you know, even your fellow Democrats are criticizing these actions, and yet not one of the 4 Democrats have come out and issued any statements on these.
As part of the Trump team, you were probably well acquainted with Michael Cohen during that campaign period in 2015 and 2016. Didn't get to deal with him?
No.
He dealt with us quite a bit. I'm just wondering what your take is on his testimony on Capitol Hill that captivated Washington, at the very least, and certainly anyone who was watching cable news during the last week. Do you think he's telling the truth about what the president did?
He is going to jail for lying to Congress. So now all of a sudden we're supposed to believe what he's saying in front of Congress again. He's somebody who is angling for a deal. He's trying to make sure that his sentence is as lenient as possible, and he's telling the Democrats exactly what they want to hear. And if he's lying, I mean, I think they've actually come up with several situations during his recent testimony where he contradicted himself numerous times. So he's somebody who has made a lifetime of lying, and he's going to jail for lying to Congress. So now all of a sudden we're supposed to believe that he's telling the truth and he's turned over a new leaf? I don't think so.
Nonetheless, President Trump's right-hand man for a number of years there.
President Trump had a number of people who worked for him, and Michael Cohen was just one of them.
All right, Steve Stepanek, we'll see you back here sometime later this year.
I'm sure.
Talk to you later.